today on Lifespan Podcast. Get ready for, well, a truly bizarre journey. We're diving into a story that's just explosive. It's about a guy whose failure is way more famous than most people's successes.
Yeah, think massive bonfires, burning effigies, and a plot that honestly could have blown up English history. Literally.
Welcome to Lifespan Podcast.
Yeah.
And like we always say, forget what you learned in school.
This is history's unhinged side.
Exactly. And this bizarre journey today, we're cracking open the file on a man who kind of stumbled into becoming this icon of rebellion, Guy Fawkes.
Right, we're moving beyond the textbook summaries.
We want to get into the real story, the almost unbelievable tale of Guy Fawkes. You hear anarchist icon sometimes, which is, well, sort of true, sort of not. He's the guy behind the mask, sure, but also behind a lot of gunpowder. So our mission for this bizarre journey isn't just remember the 5th of November. It's about understanding the powder keg that was England back then and what drove someone to basically hold the match.
So let's set the scene a bit. Who was this Guy Fawkes? Born in 1570, died well, was executed in 1606. He was a soldier, mercenary type, definitely knew his explosives.
And famously a failed domestic terrorist, key player in the gunpowder plot.
That's the one.
Okay, so to get Fawkes, you really have to get the world he was living in. Think early 1600s England, Queen Elizabeth the Scoth, King James the Thirst, who was already King James VI of Scotland. He's on the throne now.
And religiously. Hoo boy, it was a mess. England had flipped back and forth, but by then it was hardcore Protestant.
Right, and if you were Catholic, life was not easy. We're talking serious fines, these recusancy fines, just for skipping Protestant church.
Yeah, hefty penalties.
Yeah.
And Catholics couldn't hold public office. Priests were basically hunted men. The general feeling was very anti-Catholic.
Imagine your whole family facing that, just for your beliefs. That's the kind of pressure cooker environment we're talking about.
And what's interesting, or maybe tragic, is that when James first came up from Scotland, some Catholics actually had a bit of hope. His mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, was Catholic, right?
Yeah, you'd think maybe some leniency.
Nope. Hope stashed. James basically doubled down on the anti-Catholic laws, and that just fueled more desperation, especially among the Catholic gentry, the landowners who had, a lot to lose. This is the backdrop for our bizarre journey.
Which leads us to Robert Catesby.
Ah, Catesby. Yeah, charismatic guy, very devout Catholic, but also getting more and more radical. He was furious with the Protestant system.
And his solution wasn't like writing letters to Parliament.
Not even close. His idea was extreme. Wipe them out violently.
And that's where the gunpowder plot comes from. Catesby gets this tight-knit group together, other disgruntled Catholics. You hear names like Thomas Winter, Jack Wright, Percy.
Your crew. And the plan they came up with, it's just audacious, doesn't even cover it. They actually managed to rent a cellar right underneath the House of Lords.
Insane.
Totally insane. The plan was to pack it with gunpowder, enough to, vaporize the entire government during the state opening of Parliament, November 5th, 1605.
We're talking the king, his sons, all the lords, the bishops, the House of Commons, everyone gone. Poof.
The sheer scale of it. What does that tell you about how desperate these guys felt?
And it didn't stop there. If the explosion worked, the next step was basically regime change chaos. Kidnap the king's young daughter, Princess Elizabeth.
Right, install her as a puppet Catholic queen.
And hope the confusion sparks a massive Catholic uprising across the country. It's like something out of a thriller novel.
It really is. So, okay, where does Guy Fawkes fit into this madness?
Yeah, he wasn't the leader, right?
No, Catesby was the mastermind. But Catesby needed someone specific. He needed an explosives expert, someone tough, committed, devoutly Catholic, and crucially, someone nobody would recognize in London.
And Fawkes was all of that.
Ticked every box. He'd spent years fighting for Catholic Spain against the Protestant Dutch rebels, so he knew explosives, siege warfare, the whole deal. He was tough. And he was using an alias, Guido Socks, sometimes just Guido for extra cover.
Yeah. That military background wasn't just marching then. It was practical skills they desperately needed.
Exactly. His experience, especially with gunpowder and sieges, made him the perfect operational guy for the job. We'll get into more of that in the deep cuts later.
So the plot is hatched, the explosives expert is in place. But we know it failed. What happened when it got foiled? What was the immediate reaction?
Oh, it was intense, a real mix. On one hand, absolute panic and horror. People were just stunned by the brutality and scale of what was planned. Can you imagine hearing that news for the first time, trying to blow up Parliament?
Unthinkable. Just wow.
But on the other hand, there was this huge wave of relief that the king survived. And a lot of people saw it as, divine intervention. God saved the Protestant king.
Which led to bonfires.
Spontaneous bonfires, yeah. Right across London that very night, November 5th, people celebrating. And Parliament pretty quickly made it official, declared November 5th an annual day of Thanksgiving. That's the actual origin of Bonfire Night.
But for Catholics in England, this must have been disastrous.
Oh, absolutely devastating. A PR nightmare doesn't even begin to cover it. Any small hope they had for better treatment, gone. Up in smoke, you could say. The government clamped down hard. New laws, even harsher than before. Catholics were viewed with even more suspicion, more hatred, and that feeling, that prejudice, sadly stuck around for a long, long time.
It really shows how fear can just amplify everything after something like this, doesn't it?
Definitely. And the government. They went into propaganda overdrive. Sermons preached about how the plotters were basically demons. Pamphlets painted them as evil. The official story hammered home the idea of the king's miraculous escape.
Reinforcing the dangerous Catholic narrative.
Exactly. And bolstering the king's legitimacy as divinely protected. That narrative shaped how people saw Catholics for decades.
Of course, with something this big, questions start popping up immediately. Cover-ups, conspiracies.
Right. The official story was very tightly controlled, but people whispered. That anonymous warning letter to Lord Monteagle. Super convenient, wasn't it? Who wrote it? Why deliver it in a way that basically guaranteed the authorities would see it?
And then there's the big shadow hanging over it all. Robert Cecil, the Earl of Salisbury, James's chief minister, his spy master.
Cecil? Did he know more than he let on? Was Fawkes maybe just a pawn? Did Cecil let the plot develop just so he could swoop in, expose it, and then have an excuse to crush Catholic dissent?
The headlines at the time were just screaming, treason, papist devils. Makes you wonder about official stories in general,
It really does. So how do we remember it now? It's kind of wild how it's changed.
Bonfire Night is still huge in the UK, right? But it's different now.
Yeah, very different. The anti-Catholic stuff has mostly faded. Now it's more about the fireworks, the big bonfires, community events, and burning the effigy. The Guy.
The Guy. And outside the UK, Fawkes is often just that name. Maybe a vague picture of a guy with a pointy hat and mustache.
Pretty much. A historical footnote for many. But then, here's where the bizarre journey takes its sharpest turn. V for Vendetta.
The Mask.
The Mask. Thanks to Alan Moore's graphic novel and the movie, Fawkes gets completely reimagined. Suddenly he's this global symbol. Anti-establishment, anonymity, think the anonymous hacker's rebellion against tyranny.
Which is just incredibly ironic, isn't it?
Totally ironic. Here's a guy who was fighting to bring back a Catholic monarchy, maybe even a theocracy, and now he's the face of fighting against oppression, often by groups he probably would have hated. It tells you so much about how symbols get reinterpreted over time, doesn't it?
Absolutely wild. Okay, let's dig deeper now, into the gunpowder rabbit hole. We've got the basics, but like you said, the how and why. That's where the questions really start.
Right. The official story seems neat, but it leaves gaps.
So let's really get into those gaps, the theories swirling around the gunpowder plot.
Okay. So the official line, the government version. Fanatical Catholics, Catesby's the ringleader, they hatch this evil plan. Loyal Catholic Lord Monteagle gets a mysterious anonymous letter, warns him off Parliament. Monteagle, being a good subject, takes it straight to Robert Cecil. Cecil shows the king. King James, brilliant man, figures out gunpowder. Search happens. Fawkes is caught red-handed with the barrels, confesses under duress.
Right. Torture.
Torture, and bang, plot foiled, king saved, let's light some bonfires. That's the need package.
Theory number one, the government sting. Cecil the puppet master.
Yeah, the Cecil knew all along theory, or maybe even nudged it along. The idea is Cecil, staunch anti-Catholic chief spy, saw this as a golden opportunity, let the plot develop just enough so he could expose it dramatically.
Wow. What was his endgame?
Perfect excuse for a massive crackdown on all Catholics, consolidate his own power, look like the savior of the kingdom. If he did orchestrate it or even just let it run, what does that say about how far governments might go? Makes you question things, right?
For sure. And there's circumstantial stuff pointing that way.
Oh, yeah. That Monteagle letter feels too convenient, doesn't it? Who wrote it? Why send it like that? Cecil definitely benefited hugely. And why leave Fawkes, this unknown face, guarding all that powder for ages if security was meant to be tight? Renting the cellar right underneath the target seems almost clumsy, or maybe deliberately obvious.
So plausible that Cecil knew something and played it smart.
Very plausible he knew something and manipulated it. A complete setup from scratch, harder to prove. But manipulation, Definitely on the table. It's a key part of this bizarre journey.
Okay, theory 2. Maybe less cloak and dagger, more
Yeah.
practical. The damp squib theory. Could it even have worked?
Right. The idea here is simple physics, almost. Gunpowder, 36 barrels of it. Sitting in a damp London cellar for months. Did it degrade? Would it have actually gone off with the massive bang they intended?
I mean, damp cellars and old gunpowder don't sound like a great mix.
Gunpowder can degrade in damp conditions, absolutely. And that cellar under Parliament probably wasn't airtight and climate controlled.
So maybe it would just fizzled.
Well, that was a thought for a while, but modern science kind of ruined that theory. They've done recreations, even for TV shows, using similar amounts of period-accurate gunpowder, and the conclusion, big boom. Even with some degradation, that much powder, confined like that, it would have been catastrophic, devastating. So, the damp squib idea, mostly debunked now. The threat was terrifyingly real.
Okay, so the bomb likely would have worked. What about Fawkes himself?
Yeah.
Theory 3. Was he just the fall guy? The patsy?
The idea that maybe he wasn't really in the know. Catesby and the core group were running the show, maybe even figures like Cecil pulling strings behind the scenes, and Fawkes was just the guy left holding the fuse when the guards showed up. Convenient scapegoat.
But he seemed pretty committed, didn't he? Didn't just crumble immediately.
Exactly. That's the main argument against the patsy theory. He was chosen specifically for his skills and his nerve. He held out under initial questioning before the really nasty torture started. That doesn't sound like some clueless pawn.
Yeah.
He seems like a willing, committed participant, even if he wasn't the leader.
So the patsy theory, probably low credibility.
Pretty low, yeah. He knew what he was doing. He was a key operational part of the plan.
So, wrapping up the theories,
Yeah.
historians generally accept the main story but argue about Cecil's role.
Pretty much. The core plot happened. Catesby led it. Fawkes was the explosives guy. The big historical debate is really how it was discovered and how much Cecil knew beforehand or manipulated events.
And conspiracy theorists lean towards the government setup.
Often, yeah. And the modern protesters with the masks, they're tapping into the V for vendetta symbolism, not really debating 17th century politics. Local bonfire night traditions just kind of keep the basic story alive.
But you gotta admit, the sheer scale of the original plan,
Yeah.
blowing up everything, it's got that gloriously unhinged quality we look for on this show.
Oh, absolutely. Textbook, bizarre journey material.
And the echoes of that journey are still around today. Obviously, Bonfire Night.
Right. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. Started super specific. Celebrating the king's escape, Protestant victory, often burning effigies of the Pope alongside Fawkes.
But now it's mostly secular?
Largely, yeah. Fireworks, bonfires, community gatherings, burning the guy. It's just part of the fabric of British culture now.
And the word guy, that still blows my mind.
It's amazing, isn't it? The effigies were called guys. Then it became slang for anyone dressed weirdly, probably because the effigies looked rough. Then somehow, especially in America in the 19th century, it just generalized to mean any man, any fellow.
So every time we say, hey guys,
Yeah.
we're referencing a 17th century failed terrorist.
Unknowingly, yep. Pub trivia gold, like you said.
And that Parliament security check, that's still a thing.
Still a thing. The yeomen of the guard, in their full Tudor outfits, ceremonially search the cellars with lanterns before the state opening every year. A direct ritual stemming right from the gunpowder plot, hundreds of years later.
Wow. But maybe the biggest, weirdest legacy is the V for Vendetta thing.
For sure. Alan Moore and David Lloyd took the historical figure, kept the mask idea, but turned him into this anarchist fighting future fascism.
Yeah.
And that mask, it just took off. Anonymous protesters worldwide.
It's the symbol of resistance now.
Yeah, completely disconnected from Fawkes' actual aims, which were, restoring Catholicism. The irony is just staggering.
Has the plot itself shown up elsewhere in culture?
Oh, yeah. Literature, for example. Scholars often point to Shakespeare's Macbeth. Written soon after the plot, it's full of themes of treason, killing the king, and this idea of equivocation.
Equivocation?
Yeah, it was a big deal during the plotters' trials, basically using ambiguous language to mislead people without technically lying. It was associated with Jesuits at the time, and you see echoes of that kind of tricky language and moral ambiguity in Macbeth. Gives you a peek into the anxieties of the time.
So Fawkes himself kind of remains this symbol of spectacular failure,
Right.
almost pulling off the impossible.
For some, definitely. The ultimate near miss. Caught literally moments before lighting the fuse that could have changed everything.
Okay, let's get into some of those juicy details.
Yeah.
The pub trivia pay dirt, as we called it.
Right, deep cuts. First off, his alias when caught, John Johnson.
John Johnson, seriously.
Seriously, claimed he was just Thomas Percy's servant. And apparently he had incredible nerve during the first round of questioning, didn't crack easily.
Until the torture warrant came down from King James himself.
Yeah, that's a chilling piece of paper. James authorized starting with gentler tortures, whatever those were, but escalating gradatum step by step to the rack if needed.
And it was needed.
It was used severely.
Which brings us to those signatures.
Oh, man, the signatures, it's brutal. Before the worst of the torture, he signs Guido Fawkes. It's a bit shaky, but clear, legible.
And after?
After days on the rack, it's just a wreck, a barely recognizable scrawl. You can easily look them up online. Guy Fawkes signatures before-after torture. It's a really stark visual reminder of what he went through. Hits you right in the gut.
Definitely. And that Monteagle letter again.
Yeah.
The actual words are so strange.
They really are. Let me see if I have it here.
Yeah.
My lord, out of the love I bear some of your friends, I have a care of your preservation. Therefore I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this parliament. For God and man hath concurred to punish the wickedness of this time. And then later, yet I say they shall receive a terrible blow this parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them.
Wow. Cryptic.
And
we still don't know who wrote it for sure.
Still a mystery. Top theory is maybe Francis Tresham, who is Monteagle's brother-in-law and one of the minor plotters, trying to save his relative. Or was it Cecil setting the stage? Still debated. That ambiguity is fascinating, isn't it? Makes you wonder about historical certainty.
And the sheer amount of gunpowder, 36 barrels, just quantify that for us again.
It's about 2,500 kilos. That's like 5,500 pounds. Modern experts agree if that had gone off under the House of Lords. Obliteration. Total devastation for blocks around. They were not messing around.
Terrifying. And Fawkes' own end. Sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered.
The full gruesome works. Horrific. But he cheated the executioner in a way.
How?
As he was climbing the ladder to the gallows, he either jumped or fell off, broke his neck, died instantly.
So he avoided the drawing and quartering part.
Exactly. Spared the worst of it. Whether it was a final act of defiance trying to control his own death or just luck slipping, we'll never know.
Damn the others. Catesby the rest.
It's not so lucky. Catesby, Percy, a couple of others died in a shootout when the authorities caught up to them, the ones captured alive. They faced trial and the full, horrific execution. No quick neck breaking for them.
And remind us about Fawkes' background before the plot again. The soldiering.
Right. He wasn't just some random guy. He'd spent about 10 years fighting for Catholic Spain over in the Netherlands against the Protestant Dutch. Got a reputation as a solid soldier, good under pressure, and, crucially, skilled with explosives and siege tactics.
That's why Catesby wanted him.
Exactly. He was the specialist Catesby needed. Fawkes had even tried a couple of years earlier in 1603 to get the King of Spain interested in backing a Catholic rebellion in England. That didn't work out, but it shows his commitment.
So if people listening want to keep digging into this bizarre journey, where should they go?
Okay, good question. For primary sources and official info, the UK Parliament Archives online are great. They have a whole section on the gunpowder plot. And the National Archives UK website, too. Just search their catalogs.
Any standout books?
Antonio Fraser's Faith and Treason is considered kind of a classic, very detailed history. And James Travers wrote one called Gunpowder, The Players Behind the Plot, which focuses more on the people involved.
How about watching something? Documentaries.
Yeah, YouTube's your friend here. Search Gunpowder Plot documentary, you'll find loads. BBC has done some good ones. Maybe add plotting terror to your search terms.
And for the modern angle.
Definitely read the V for Vendetta graphic novel by Alan Moore and David Lloyd, essential. The movie's good too, gets the main idea across. And check out history channels on YouTube. Lots of good video essays break down the plot. Oh, and websites like History Extra, Smithsonian Magazine, National Geographic often have solid articles.
Okay, so wrapping up this bizarre journey. Guy Fawkes. Not the leader, but the guy in the cellar. The soldier turned religious zealot caught in this incredibly ambitious, ultimately failed plot.
Yeah, and it's just such a powerful reminder, isn't it? History's messy, motives are complicated, legacies twist and turn in ways you'd never expect.
That irony again, the guy trying to impose a Catholic theocracy becoming a symbol against oppression for groups he'd probably despise.
It's
Wild.
It really makes you think. So what do you think listening to this? Was it a setup? Was it Dune idealism pushed too far? Or just, a really, really bad day for Guido Fawkes? We'd love to hear your theories.
Definitely. Join us next time on Lifespan Podcast. We'll have another bizarre journey into someone else's unhinged history.
Until then, keep digging, keep asking questions about the past, and maybe, just maybe, double check what you're storing in your cellar, especially if it's damp.
Welcome to Lifespan, the weekly podcast that digs up the dirt on the most outrageous, chaotic, and downright WTF lives ever lived. All told in a fun and fascinating way. Share, rate, and follow the show for more wild stories.